hat. You look so sweet when you look like that. Just wait and see, you'll be the talk of the town. Your dimpled chin, your turned up nose, the whole wide world will be looking at those. Just wait and see, you'll be the talk of the town. Your disposition is marvelous too. My one ambition is to be like you. And maybe some sweet day
That's us with my Grandpa Paul Jacquin. We, the grandchildren, all had matching cowboy, cowgirl outfits. Pamela Lynn. Vivian and Bernard, Diana, Craig, Claudia, Linda, and Mark all went these at the time. I was 3 when this was taken in 1954. Mark Wenthy.
Watch out, you better not cry, better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town.
Leon says the man in the front of the pole with the crew cut is our dad, Lloyd Klutz, holding me. Gail Mullen.
He sees you.
Santa at Barker's store corner. As a child, I can remember getting candy there. The picture has some people I recognize. Bill and Earlene Niewarner, with Brad and Beth next to the building. Jean Niewarner. Definitely my mom and dad, Brad and Beth. Jolie Droppy. My favorite memory would be when Santa came, I would hear sleigh bells and a knock at the door. When I would look outside, there would be packages sticking out of the snow. Gail Mullen. Going to Grandma's Christmas Eve, Joe Sternett. Watching for Rudolph's nose and waiting with Dad in the car for Mom to be ready for church. Santa came while we were gone. Pamela Lynn. When Dad woke me up by honking the horn on my new bike, I crept downstairs, saw the bike, hurried back to bed, and had a hard time getting to sleep. Next morning I pretended to be surprised. Bonnie Keith Lang. The year my dad brought in sheep manure and told us Rudolph had been there. Judy Kotke. We often had Christmas dinner at my grandma and grandpa's in their apartment above the hardware store. I bet more than once we had what we called Mike's Wieners as the main course. They were so good. Paula Jo Marks. This is the Ludwig and Louise Ziske home in Fredericksburg. The house is still standing at the corner of Railroad and Hamilton. This photo was taken around 1908. The people left to right are Ida and Richard Ziske, Louise Ziske holding Esther Ross, Ludwig, Agnes, and Gus Ziske, Ellen Osterhaus. My mom, Dolores, said that Grandma Evelyn Ullman, daughter of Richard and Ida, had given birth to her in that house. Judy Little. I remember riding the train with Kathy Getch, walk to the pool, swim all day, then walking to the theater, and our dads picked us up after the show. Those were the good old days. Jan Forsman. I even remember I sat with Rosanna Beckman. I think it cost us 13 cents. Kathy Schmedeke. I remember fighting grass fires along the tracks, sometimes twice a day, starting in 1955 until they went to diesel engines. Fact is, I guess we had fires after the old steam engines were gone too, maybe even more often. Rainey Warner.
what I feel in my heart. I won't have so much upfront sugar touch, and I can't begin with Irving Berlin. My song, though a poet would never okay my song, still you know what I'm striving to say. The words may be crude, the tune may be wrong, but you'll find my heart in my song. Just look her over. This is the missus, she's mine. I'll get those kisses. Now I'm in clover. I've caught some fish on my line. I own those lips, yes sir. I own those eyes, yes sir. And a whole lot more. She was worthwhile waiting for. This is the missus. Just look her over. This is the missus, she's mine.
Mrs. Ted Marilyn Moldenhauer gave me this Fredericksburg United Methodist Church plate at my bridal shower, which was held in the Church Fellowship Hall some 26 years ago. Susan Larry Bentley.
Life is just a bowl of cherries. Don't be so serious. Life's too mysterious. You work, you save, you worry so, but you can't take your dough when you go. So keep repeating it's a berry. The strong, the salt must fall. The sweet things in life to you were just home. So how can you lose what you've never owned? Life is just a bowl of cherries. So live and laugh at it.
I have one, also have the same plate with picture of old previous church, Aaron O'Day. Sang at that church in a quartet with Carol Klutz on a few Sunday mornings while in high school. All four of us were different faiths, and sang in each other's churches on occasion. Bonnie Keith Lang. The Old Brethren Church, about a mile east of town. I often would visit that church as my mother was born into this church. I remember that it had nice padded vinyl seats in contrast to the pews we had at the American Lutheran Church where I was raised. Jean Niewarner. The photo with the buggy was when the church was at its original location before being moved east of town on 18. Jean Niewarner. The Church of the Brethren had a campsite at Pine Lake near Eldora, Iowa. I'm thinking this was a weekend retreat at their site. Maybe family and friends taking pictures of friends in the boat. Leon Klotz. I think this was taken in 1945. I'm in the picture along with many others we know. Larry Elliott. In the pictures of just the ladies, I found my mom, Mildred Elliott, and standing next to her is my Aunt Winifred Elliott. Next to her, to the right, is Hazel Wagoner, who was my dad's first cousin. I believe standing next to Hazel, but behind her to the right, is Patience Whitnable, who is Judy Whitnable Forsman's granddaughter. Larry Elliott. We lived in this house from 1960 to 1975 when my father, Larry Meese, was the Brethren pastor. It was about 1 mile east of Fredericksburg on Highway 18. I never realized the church was moved beside the house from somewhere else. The church and house both got additions while we lived there. Later, the church was made into apartments and then burned down. Leanna Meese Povolatus. I believe the school picture was taken of Evergreen Valley No. 3 School, 1 mile north of Highway 18 on V62. This may also have been called the Judge School. The Truans and the Klotzes went there. I would say the Milneys went there also. Art Deodore's daughters went there, and they lived on the Milne Farm or Moshmeyer Farm. The school in the picture would have been replaced with a newer one, which was there until the schools were reorganized. Maybe we should have paid more attention to the initials carved into the desks. Leon Klotz. The original school was built in 1865 by Frederick Patton, the town's namesake, at a cost of $1,600. It was 30 by 50 feet. It also served as a meeting house for the Baptists until 1870 and the Methodists until 1875, when they built their own structures. Jeannie Warner. This is a 1911 photo of Stapleton Township School. In the center is Frank Rochford. Gert Leona and Mary were his sisters. Josephine and Rosella were his aunts and sisters of his mother. I'm not sure who the others are. Gene Hoffman. This is a picture of the Boyd School during the 1937-38 school year. My mother, Loretta Downs, was the teacher that year prior to her marriage. Deborah Downs Van Sant. This school is Dresden number 7. Back row, left to right, Carolyn Crabtree, Sharon Crabtree, Marianne Crabtree, Jerry Heber, Linda Nelson, Miss Anderson, and Robert Ellison. Middle row, Jean Rochford, Danny Volbrook, Frances Rochford, Sherry Crabtree, and Claudette Ellison. Front row, Carol Stagey and Amelia Volbrook. Left to right, Madonna Gillum, Idell Parks, Doris Parks, Lloyd Dutcher, Helen Ott, Don Kerr, Roy Spiker, Lyle Klutz, and Virgil Kerr. Gail Mullen. I went to school here. Donna Manweiler. Mary, you remember the plays and singing contest when all the country schools were together at New Hampton. That was fun. Helen Hartman. I remember all the good times at the country school, playing games at recess or playing ball. We did have a lot of fun. Mary Lantow. Those were sure fun days. Tipping the outhouses back up after Halloween, playing Annie I Over, Kick the Can, Fox and Goose, work up baseball, snowball forts and fights, a hideout in the big road culvert, square dancing, and Christmas programs. Bonnie Keith Lang.
Your silvery beams will bring long dreams, will be cuddling soon. Oh, by the silvery moon.
you're shining so bright,
of the silvery moon.
especially tonight.
I want to spoon
Oh, cuddle right up
to my honey, I'll croon love's tune.
my honeymoon. Keep us shining in June.
Your silvery beams will bring love dreams. We'll be cuddling soon.
Oh, by the silvery moon.
Do 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 do.
Oh, by the silvery moon.
Do 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 do.
Oh, by the silvery moon.
Do do do.
Under the silvery moon.
This might be a high school graduation picture from 1928-29. Sport was my clue. Lloyd was entertaining sport. Lloyd Klutz graduated from high school at that time, so I believe this is a group of his classmates. Lloyd was sport, left Durwood Leach, left Glenn Matke, left Howard Whitnable, and Evelyn Van Doren. Leon Klutz.
My heart goes tipsy in me. You and you alone bring out the tipsy in me. I love all the many charms about you. Above all, I want my arms about you. Don't be a naughty baby. Come to mama, do. My sweet embrace above. I love all the many charms about you.
The building on the right of the bank with the porch posts is the Julian Hotel. Eventually, the top story was removed brick by brick and reassembled to the east or right of the building to create the building there now. Gene Niewarner.
Come to mama, do. My sweet embrace above you.
Sunbonnet too, sunshine and roses ran second to you. You look so nice that I kissed you twice under your sunbonnet blue. It was only a kind of a kiss, but it tasted much sweeter than pie. Then the next thing I knew, I was dead stuck on you. When you wore a kiss so high.
The old Milne and Chase building sold Red River special threshers and Hart Par tractors, also windmills and pumps. eventually became Miller and Cocoy. The building was torn down to make way for the convenience store that sits there now. Gene Niewarner.
It was only a
I remember the band concerts and ice cream socials there. Margot, Matke, Plague & Co.
sweeter than pie. Then the next thing I knew, I was dead stuck on you. When you were a kiss so hard.
If you look very closely at the awning, it says Churchill Brothers. I believe they had the meat market before Mike's Brothers. Cindy Lantow. Grandpa John came from Czechoslovakia in the 1890s to start the meat market in 1894. He was the founder and original owner. Jane Malugin Brooks. I remember the names I heard. John and Charlie, then Rudy and Carl. All Mikes. Mom told me of how Charlie would always back his delivery truck from the driveway to the meat market to get to work. I remember Charlie's wife, as her name was Tina Mikes, and they lived across the street from my grandparents, C.E., Jake, and Nina Leach. Mark Wenthig. I just discovered their hot dogs are made now in West Bend. Rudy and Frank's uncle opened a meat market there, and his 3 sons ran it. They made the notorious hot dogs and bologna that we remember. Since then, the new owners have been making them, and they are named Mike's Wieners. Gail Moen. Couldn't resist. Latest generation of Mike's Wieners, still yummy. Bob Walden. Hi Mark, this is the first time I have seen that photo. My parents' first restaurant was the Locker, and it was either the building with the striped awning or the building to the right of it. John Simmons. I would put the second restaurant 5 buildings up, the white or light colored one. I think it goes, mixing 50s version with the 60s version, the Locker, Tavern, Frank's Men's, General Store, the Meat Market, Bank, Restaurant, Barbershop, Gamble's, Grocery Store, and the Hardware Store. I'm getting old though, so that's probably wrong. Jim Feldick. The names on the awning say Allen and Hayden. Any clue? Is the restaurant to the east Upham's? Kathy Schmidtke. I think the Locker was the building to the right of the stripped awning building. The awning building eventually became the insurance office. John Simmons. I remember going inside a time or two. and getting to buy a toy from the glass-top display case. Dixie Wakeman. The man sitting on the bench was my father, Fred Richardson. The '51 Cadillac belonged to the photographer who took this picture. The drugstore was owned by the Hoths of Hawkeye and managed by my mother, Zelda Richardson, who was a registered pharmacist. David Richardson. The bike leaning against the pole was mine, and the front of my parents' '35 Plymouth. David Richardson. The insurance office was Alice Upham's, who later married Glenn Ellison. The next was International Harvester, run by Henry Curson and Claude Wesp. David Richardson. My mother would tell stories of the ladies stomping on the wooden floors of the Masonic Hall. Jane Malugin Brooks. The Ford sign is Morphs. Gary Schneider. The Masonic and the Eastern Star Hall is identified by the two little round signs in the iron bracket. Brian O'Day. The building with shoes on it was torn down and replaced by the present-day Amves Hall. Brian O'Day. The little building next to the drugstore has been a beauty shop and later an insurance office, and beyond that, Wayne Carey's Realty. David Richardson. Possession of the gumball machine on the corner of the counter. Still in perfect condition. What a surprise to come across a picture of it. Jesse Limes. Pete and Shirley Malugin ran the S&W grocery store from 1950 to 1973, one of 3 grocery stores at the time. Jane Malugin Brooks. I remember walking from my Grandma Sullivan's house a whole block and a half to get 2 for a penny candy. Dixie Wakeman. I remember buying an ice cream bar for a nickel. Ruth Schwab Walden. Oh, for the apple cider vinegar in the old wooden barrel. Bring in your glass gallon jug for refills. Good stuff. Julie S. Johnson. Gruenberg boys and I bought hundreds of baseball cards in that store. Aaron O'Day. I remember the Bing Cherry Cooler. Julie S. Johnson. Hoth Drugstore that was on the corner east of where Barker's and now Fredericksburg Food Center is. It is Zerelda Richardson, Dave Richardson's mother, Cindy Lantow. My memory only goes back to 1949, and at that time Whittler's store was in the same brick building as Barker's in the west 1/3 of it. Ray Warner. There were 3 storefronts in the old brick building that burned down. Barker had the corner, the second storefront was occupied by the printer of the Fredericksburg paper, and then Whittler's store, and then the tavern. Barker finally occupied all 3 storefronts. Brian O'Day. Fred always gave me a cookie to eat while my mother shopped. Problem was, it was an ice cream cookie and I didn't like them. I would hold it in my hand until we got home, and by then, it was a melted glob. My dog enjoyed it. Sandra Lee Bell. This is Morphs. The man with the small boy is my grandfather, Carl Richardson, with Lawrence. This building was later Milne and Chase and is now where the All-Stop is. The man in the foreground is either Paul Morph or Henry Curson. They were in business together, and when they built the brick building across the street, they divided up with Paul Morph for the Ford dealership and Henry Curson, the International Harvester dealer. David Richardson. A find from some of my old pictures. My great-grandpa Otto Schaub with my mom Joyce and Aunt Darlis when he drove for Fredericksburg Produce. Pamela Lynn. The produce had a fire at the stockyard and the trucks were burned. Brian O'Day. The gentleman seated at the desk is my grandfather, C.E. Leach. The other in the picture is Mystery. You can see the safe that is still in the building and used for an office for the Plum Creek Art Guild. The photos were probably taken in the 1930s. Craig Wenthe. building to the right looks like Dr. Zoller's office. David Richardson. John Deere Building was where the old fire station is now. Ott and Forsman Building was built on a vacant lot in the 40s, I believe. Ray Newarner. The building was across the street from the hardware store back door. north of Ottenforsman eggplant. Levon Hartson. Last name was Hannon. Drawing a blank on the first name. The mom's name was Gladys, I think. Julie S. Johnson. I have a few memories of the John Deere shop and the vacant lot where they had Saturday night movies at least one summer. Rainey Warner. That's Georgia Mike Skitch left and Barbara Mike Steamer right in the snow. Carla Mikes. The Klotz Farm in an Iowa winter. That is the original barn before the fire. The house still has the porch on it as well. It's rather nice to see the homestead as it originally was. The barn burned the winter before I was born. Gail Mullen. Looks like pheasants right in the yard. Julie S. Johnson. C.E. Leach rescuing benches from the city park in 1941. Craig Wenthe. Looks like something Edwin would make. He klutzed it, as he would say. Rainey Warner. Pretty sure Edwin is kneeling and Paul is driving. He lived in a house south of the Lutheran church. Jeannie Warner.